Welcome at another Leadership Lyric session with Yoke and Thomas.
Thomas,
Yay. And
yay!
today is all about how to make a killer speech that sticks. So Thomas and I were just discussing and saying, as leaders, there's so many places where you could use public speaking, whether it's a team meeting, a company presentation, conference, or industry events, whether you're pitching to investors, sometimes it's media interviews, employee engagement events, sometimes it's crisis management, or a public addressing ceremony where you're actually handing over certificates, or it could be a networking event. But then there's also more formal things like community outreaches, corporate social responsibility, board meetings, and sales pitches. So we want to help you as leaders make a killer speech that actually sticks. So if we're talking about stickiness, why is that important, Thomas, when a leader speaks that people actually remember what they've said?
That's a good question because up till now, a lot of people and a lot of leaders actually just provide information, they provide a message, and they think that, well, now the message is delivered. So my job is finished. But providing the information and sharing the information, it's not actually the job. The job is to get people involved and get the message to stick, for people to remember it. And if you need to change, or there is a threat, or you want to engage people, it's not just about delivering the message. It actually is to get people involved or engaged and ready for action. So it's really important for people to resonate with the message and make it stick.
One of the ways in which you can do that I teach people in my presentation skills is the moment you tell a story or you use a metaphor and people feel something, that's where dopamine gets released in the brain that actually allows you to memorize and remember something. So I started many years ago when I was an auto trader experimenting with this when I read about brain power from the author John Medina, and he basically said, take them on a high, take them on a low, make them angry, make them do different levels of emotions, and the person will remember what you said. And it's weird. I've had people through the years. So I left Auto Trader in 2014. People still come up to me and say they can still remember the training I gave them. And it's stuck because of the stories. So that's one of my tips. So the next topic that I think we both can weigh in on, and I'll ask you first, Thomas, and then I'll give my insights. It's what are some of the common mistakes that leaders make when speaking publicly? And how can it be avoided?
What they usually do is that they are not providing stories, and they're not providing stories that they have actually experienced, because people feel that if there is a story, you have to be really distinct if it's you have experienced the story or if you're just telling a story. Because if you're lying, people don't believe you. That's one thing. So you have to distinguish between those two. And if you're telling a story that you have experienced from your own life, it is really important to actually tell the story and tell people why it is important to you and what we can learn from the story. Because one thing is that the audience, that you are actually telling them a story and you're opening up, you're vulnerable. You don't have to be trauma dumping and tell them your secrets. It's not about that. It has to be a story that it actually is proper for the situation. We are hardwired to listen to stories because that is actually how knowledge was transferred from generation to generation.
That's
Yes,
true.
in the early days, because we can write, we can do this, we can make videos. So we told stories and we sat around the campfire and we told stories about things to avoid, things that are good, stories about heroes, villains. And of course, those stories are the reason why we are here today, because we survived. So
Yeah.
our ancestors told stories that made them survive. So we are the result of those stories. So that is why stories are important, because we are hardwired to listen to the stories.
I love what you're saying, that we are hardwired for stories.
Mhm.
I think with storytelling, what people get wrong often is they make themselves to be the hero of the story. So they just painting this picture of, I'm so amazing. This is my career. This is what I've done. You often see these stories with videos as well, where people be like, I'm a multimillionaire. This is my house. Do you want this? So very vague. While if you're telling a story where there are lessons, where you're actually showing your vulnerability, where you're showing the mistakes that you've made, people can actually relate. And that's where some of the bigger growth areas comes in. I tend to tell a story of, it was 2010 when I went to actually bring a story across, a point across about your mindset, and that if you're focusing in public speaking on what you don't want, your mind is painting a picture of you falling over or stammering or going red. You're actually creating this state. So I told them a story of, in 2010, I went on this hike. It's quite a hectic hike. It's like a 5-day backpack. You're sleeping in these huts, and on the fourth day, you get up seriously early. You need to check the tides. So at 4 a.m. with a little flashlight on your head, you start hiking, and you need to hike 9 to 10 kilometers to get to the Storm River crossing. There you need to put your bag in another bag that can float, and then you go through it and you nearly get swept into the oceans. People hold onto a rope and they're like helping each other through. So on the day that we're doing this, I tell myself the worst thing that could possibly happen is I could hurt my foot. And in the next second, I sprained my ankle. So now I still need to hike 10 kilometers, swim through the river, hike another 9 kilometers. And I actually caused my own injury. I used that story, and then I actually went into tales where I overcame that, where I was hiking in the Drakensberg and I changed my narrative and I said to myself, walk nicely, put your feet down. Like, this is okay. You can do this. And I was actually creating positive affirmations for myself. And my feet were so much stronger, and I was able to hike injury free. So, very often, when you're actually taking that person into that story of something that happened with you, people can relate to it. Were there things that you found in yourself in your public speaking journey, things that irritated you of other speakers?
Well, early on, I talked about stories and how we are hardwired to listen to stories, and it really mesmerizes us,
Hmm.
and we listen. One of the most important tools we have when doing public speaking is actually our voice. So one of the most irritating things that people can do to public speaking is to have a really boring voice. Like you said, that your story has to take people in the ups and the downs, and you have to have the hero and the villain, and the same goes for your voice. It has to go up, it has to go down. You have to use it. You can even whisper. You can talk slow, you can talk fast, you can engage with energy. And when I think that's really important, that you actually try to be yourself and think about that you're not just reading, you're telling a story. Think about how you are going to tell that story and how you would tell that story if you sat around the campfire or around the table and engaging with people. And public speakers that are not engaging and are not thinking about how they actually deliver the message, that's boring.
I love that, because your voice actually has an image. So
Mhm.
people actually relate to the image of your voice. If it's sophisticated, if it's entertaining, if you're an
Mhm.
adventurer, if you're a romantic, if you almost like a thriller, like a really
Yeah.
scary, you're creating a doomsday kind of thing. So I always say to people, it's almost like to do with sheet music. So when you're actually looking at playing a musical instrument, there were different
Mm.
notes that you play, and you were touching on this. You were talking about the speed. So is it staccato? Is it like really short little bursts? Or is it pianissimo is really soft,
Mm.
or is it loud, or is it going really fast? So the different notes actually have a different timing to it. So when I do coaching with people, I actually get them to take their script and almost like write in where are they putting emphasis on what words, where is louder,
Score.
you know what I mean? So you can use different colored pens, highlighters, whatever, but then you can practice. And
Mm.
I think these days, what's quite nice, Thomas, is with your normal smartphone, you can do a voice note or a recording. And what I have been recently doing as I'm preparing for two important speeches next weekend is I'm using Otter AI, which is a transcription tool on my phone. So writing a script, I'm recording it so I can hear and listen to the voice, which helps me remember it. Then I can send it to myself and pull out the transcript and practice it again. So you need to hear yourself because you would have your written script, but then the
Mm.
spoken word
Mm.
is often different
Mm.
than the written word. I don't know if you've seen that. So that's where
Yeah.
you need to hear, does it sound good?
Yeah, because every time I write something, and even when I wrote my
Yes,
book as well, and I've done it with my thesis and everything I've done at school and university as well, I always read out loud
that's good.
because when you do that, you actually engage more parts of your brain because you listen as well and you have been listening to music, you have been listening to other people talking like news or public speaking. So your brain is trained to listen to things and to take notice of, no, that doesn't sound correct. That doesn't sound right. I have to do something there. That's boring. If it is a word or something, and you can change your tonality or the volume or the speed, like you said about staccato, if you want to make a point. So I think that's a really, really good idea. Read out loud, read for yourself. It sounds like, crazy, but it's really
Something that I've also noticed is, I don't know if you've seen this, if
mm,
you wake up, you've slept deeply, and someone phones you, don't actually even want to answer the phone because your voice hasn't woken up yet. So your voice would sound all croaky. Have you ever heard that your voice sounds a bit strange in the morning? So what speakers need to do more of is their vocal warm-up exercises. They can do breathing exercises that you can actually, and you can go online. There are different things that you can do with your tongue, your jaws, with different things that actually warms up the vibrations to get your voice to really get to a good warmed up place. And I would definitely encourage people to do that.
those are great tips.
So in terms of body language, why is that important in public speaking for leaders if they're on the stage at a conference?
We are animals, and body language and what we say and what we do, those are, message carriers. you know and you can just look at dogs and look at animals and how they behave and how they send signals to each other. They can't write memos and send them through the email with email and write memos and send them afterwards. What you do and how you do it, of course, you send signals. People say that you should be sort of opening your arms, but you can't do that all the time. You have to be yourself as well. But it's to think about your body language. If you express what you say with your body language, if you have bullet points, okay, draw the bullet points, draw them with your hand. And if you talk about football, okay, draw the ball or do something. If you're celebrating a goal or whatever, raise your hands and be a bit of an actor, but you still have to be yourself because with your body language, you sort of tell the story with what you say. So you sort of pump up the volume, because people see with their eyes and they hear what you say with their ears. So if you add those together, the message gets stronger.
I was watching this really cool video. I'll send it to you, where
Mhm.
this where the speaker was speaking about our hands And we need to do
Mm.
this more in our own videos, Thomas. So she was saying the moment you show your hands to people, and even if you're walking into a meeting, it actually indicates to people that you're open, it's a safe space. So if you're walking into a place, just go like, "Oh," you know what I mean? Like immediately people feel much more connected to you. So if you're on a large stage, you actually want to do much bigger gestures. So I'm just trying to like show you now with the camera,
Yeah,
it's quite
yeah,
hard, but
yeah.
like you don't want to be here. You actually want to break the barrier, go bigger, you know what I mean? Do bigger stuff. So depending on when you're in a smaller space, but open hand gestures is really important. So also like maybe practicing your body language, recording it, getting someone to film you while you're speaking is really good. So you can actually get a bit of feedback on
That,
nervous body
that's that,
language.
that's a valid point because I speak with my hands as well. I usually do. But at the same time, we're told that we should do this while when we speak publicly. But at the same time, people are advised that at work, you shouldn't be outspoken. You shouldn't be yourself because it's white collar, it's very stiff. You know, you should be professional. There is a division between the private you and the professional you. And but now we are sliding slowly, moving towards a more inclusive, a more, work environment where you actually are allowed to be more outspoken. You're actually allowed to be yourself a bit more. Of course, you should be professional as well, but if you have energy, because early on, years back, you were not supposed to have a lot of energy. Let's say in Eastern Europe, if you smiled, people looked upon you as an unprofessional. You couldn't be trusted. Just like, what? And if you, for example, UK, especially England, you have this upper stiff lip
Yes.
talk, but words should come out of your mouth, but it shouldn't look like that. That's the upper stiff lip. You should talk like this,
No,
and you sound like
it's
the. I mean,
ridiculous.
yes, it is. If you watch the news in BBC News in the 80s, for example, they talk like this, and it's very important that the Prime Minister and the Cabinet. Of course, I have to speak in my mouth and not in my throat, but I think it should be more allowed to be yourself and to express your energy and enthusiasm in a professional way. So, yes, I welcome hands.
When you are speaking in front of an audience, you have to pretend that you're speaking to one person, you're having a conversation, and 99 others are listening in. So, one of the
Mm,
techniques that I teach my people is don't use the words ladies and gentlemen because now you are making it sound like a group. Use the word you because
mm.
you is both singular and plural at the same time. So if I say, have you ever felt like an imposter when you had to address a large crowd? I could be talking to you, but I could be talking to everyone else that's listening into this podcast. So in that
Yeah, that's a good
way,
tip.
a person feels, use it in your talks, Thomas. They feel that you're talking to them. And especially when you're making eye contact, you look at a specific person for like a sentence or two, and then you walk over to another area and you make eye contact with a different portion of the audience. And then you do with another. So you don't do a rotating head where you're like, hello, hello, I'm talking. Like you don't do that. You're like having a conversation with this one, and then you're having a conversation with this one, and now you're over here. You know what I mean? So people actually
Yeah.
feel I'm looking at this person in the third row, but the 10 people behind them thinks that I'm talking to them too.
Mm.
So that's why you need to not look over people's heads, but like look them in the eye. And
I
that's
think
really
to engage with the people in the back as well, you know,
definitely.
because it's very easy to engage with the people that are close to you. So I always try to reach the people in the back rows,
Exactly.
and try to walk the room as well. Of course, I get that with TED Talks. They have this circle, the red dot, which is your perimeter. And of course, it makes the filming easier, the lighting
Mm,
easier,
mm.
everything. But I walk the room, I move a lot. And for me to stand still, it's really difficult while talking. So then I use my arms and get eye contact, use your hand, opening up. It is really important to get in contact with people, and not actually only getting in contact with people, but make them feel that you are talking to them.
So let's talk a little bit about preparation. So you
Yes.
have been doing a lot of public speaking lately. You said that you're flying to do some book signings, you're doing a talk at a executive MBA level, you're speaking at a
Yes.
business chamber. I'm speaking at quite a few conferences next week and the week thereafter. What have you found in terms of your preparation? How do you go about actually coming up with your topic, writing it? Like, can you talk us through some of the practicalities that would be helpful to
Yeah,
leaders?
for me, it's really important to start early, because if I start early, I can think about what I'm going to say and what I'm writing all the time. Actually, I come up with ideas, I rephrase, I pick up things, I see posts on LinkedIn or articles. I come up with stories, because we talked about stories earlier, and it's difficult for me to come up with appropriate stories, let's say the day before I'm going to give a talk.
Oh, yeah.
So that's
No.
why I start early. And I change the stories as well, because when I prepare, I think to myself that I have a better story. So actually start early and think about it. And that's my way of doing things, because then I can change things in my head. That's one thing. The other thing is actually to start writing early. I do that when I write my books and talks as well. I write down rubbish. It is rubbish. And it will end up here. It will be good stuff, but it starts down here. And I just write down my idea, and I do some research on the web and find some white papers. And at the same time, I figure out, okay, what sort of stories can I connect to the data? Because that's the point. I always try to start with a story and then connect with data and quotes and things like that. The other thing we talked about was to read it out loud. Read everything out loud. I did one talk earlier, and it was a bit of a test experimenting, and I didn't have any slides at all. It was very energetic and people liked it, but it was a bit difficult for them to see the timeline. So for my next talk, I'm actually including a timeline, because it is easy for people to follow the story.
Oh, that's
We can
nice.
have, yes,
So it's like a
and
line. Oh,
yes, just like a
nice.
line. Yes.
Oh, that's nice.
And I'm going to include various data and various icons, some graphic to actually make my message stronger. And I think a lot of people say that you have to practice in front of camera. I'm not a big fan of practicing in front of camera. I actually practice reading,
Mm,
but how I sort of use my arms and everything, I try to include people. I do mimicking there, and I don't try to restrain myself to sort of practiced behavior and rehearsed behavior. So I read it out loud, but I don't film it. So those are
that's
my
fine.
tips.
So I love the timeline thing that you have, and maybe a suggestion, something that you could also do is if you are on a stage, you could physically build the timeline there. So you could have the slides, but then on the floor, you could go
Mm.
and stand at the specific spaces. And as you tell the story, you actually walk. So we're back in 2004, or now you're walking to 2020. So you're actually like using the stage as your timeline. That
That's
also
a good point.
works exceptionally well. I'm just saying you could probably do both. And what else I like with the slides and the timeline is people remember things in different ways. So some people are
Mm.
very visual, and that's where the slides comes in for them. Some people are auditory, so they'll listen to what you say. And then some people are very kinesthetic. So sometimes kinesthetic is very action orientated. So what I've done in some talks is I would prepare worksheets, and during the talk, I would ask them to write things down to brainstorm with the person sitting next to them so they're actually doing something that really works for the kinesthetic people. So you're actually trying to look at because you were talking about quotes, beautiful quotes. Quotes speaks to the auditory people because they love hearing something that sounds nice. If you're doing effort with your voice, it speaks to the auditory person. But it's about actually finding those ways in which people learn so they can actually remember your message. And that's sometimes where handouts and that are also quite good because they'll listen to it there. But if there's then actionable takeaways that they can take with them, I found that really works very well. I love what you said about starting early. I've made a note here, something that you said that I need to do more of in my talk for next week is the connecting the stories with the data and looking for white papers. So I have a lot of really good stories, but I need to make it a bit more punchy for the
Yes.
almost like data nerds. For some people in business, the CEOs and the directors, they want the stats. They want to know that it's happened at other companies, why will it cause a return of investment? So because I do a lot of talking about team dynamics, emotional intelligence, staff engagement, they don't care about that. They care about how is it affecting our bottom line? Losing staff impacting our profitability. So when they have stats around that, then they will connect more to the story. So that's
Yeah,
definitely
and
one of
the,
the
the
areas.
proof is in the pudding because you can have stories, but you have to have the data because
Substance,
uh
yeah.
yes, because you have to connect the stories with the data and the data with the stories, and that is when the message gets through.
In a much deeper way that people are willing to
Yes,
action. And then they are
yes.
able to remember it because they're not going to remember the stats as part of the story they will. So that's really amazing. From my side, how I would go about it is I often use mind maps. So that's where I
Yeah.
would brainstorm my ideas and I'll even like do post-its and colored markers and go crazy. And then I would either write it or I would start with a section, record it, transcribe it, see what it sounds like. So like different versions, as you're saying. And what I've done for my conference talk is I started with the script first, but we had a deadline to submit our slides. And I decided on my main areas and points that I'm going to focus on and like the stories that you said. So before the script has been finalized, I had to decide, okay, this is going to be the visual aid for that area. So I don't put a lot of detail in there. It would just be an image with a title so that the audience can listen to me. They're not
Mm,
reading
mm,
from the
mm.
slide. So I think that's where a lot of people get wrong. If they're using visual aids, they're actually putting everything of their speech in the slide, and then people are not actually listening to you. So it can be a guide or a prompt for you as speaker, but also for the audience to just relate to, oh, where are we at? Like you're doing the timeline. How is this, what is this related to? And then what you also need to be aware of if you're doing things like slides is royalty-free images or your own photos. So be very careful that you're not using copyrighted images that you could get sued. And be careful with using, sometimes people will do speeches and they will add things like reels from Instagram and there might be music on there. Music is copyrighted and you will pay a lot of money. If you're doing a talk, it gets recorded, that goes onto YouTube, and there's music of someone and you've not bought the music rights to broadcast. So I have found that in the past, I would do a talk for free at a business event, and there I might have used videos or sounds and that. And then the moment it became a sold thing, that was either recorded or to a live audience, I had to remove all of that or make sure, actually change the images that it's royalty free and it's not just the Google images that is available. So sometimes there's a little bit of effort you need to do in that. In South Africa, there's a company called Samro, the South African Music Rights Organization. Sure, you have something similar in Norway, where you can
Yeah.
pay a yearly fee, which will allow you to play certain music as part of your presentations. So one of the
Yeah, and there is a
speakers
lot of free music out there as well.
as well.
Yeah,
So it's just about being aware. Like, is this
yeah,
copyrighted? Am I actually taking money away from a creative because I'm using their things? And then just always
yeah.
put what is the source of your photos. But if you can look at in terms of your own material, if you incorporate, hire corporate photographers, get photos, try to see if you can't build up your own photo library of photos that you can use with your own products and stories or of your teams that will be more impactful than using the same photo that everyone else is using. So that's one of the things that I would also say. Yeah.
Mm.
Thomas, why is it important to be authentic as a leader in presentations and talks?
I think it's really important for leaders to be authentic all the time. But
Well done.
of course, oh yeah, end of
Not just
story.
on stage.
No, not only on stage. I think if you look back in history, you have royals and we have distinguished guests, and there was a sort of a sense that they were up here, like very close to God, and then you had the peasants down here. And that sort of followed through for centuries. And some places today, I still the notion that people with titles are looked upon as some royals are above the rest. But especially in places where you have highly skilled workers, it's not like that because these are people that we had the industrial revolution where people just did it assigned to you and people were bossed around. But today you can't boss around educated workers because then they just quit and they don't follow you just because they have to or because they are paid. They follow you because we're doing something great or this is fun and we're changing the world or this is a great product, great colleagues, great team, great workplace. And so now for leaders, and it's more important to gather people and take part in this journey, this quest, instead of just like doing a job. And we are on a quest solving an environmental problem or an illness or coming up with a new robot or artificial intelligence that will help script writers or movie makers or surgeons. And when you're giving a speech, it's really important to show that you mean what you're saying.
Yeah,
And it is also important to show that it is actually means something to you. And it is important to say that on this quest with you. And I strongly believe that we can do this. People have to believe you. In today's society, we talk a lot about feelings because, let's say, 30 years ago, we didn't talk about feelings in the workplace. We talked about hard facts. In the 80s, you had the film Wall Street and greed is good. And then you had yuppies and everybody was trying to step on somebody else and climb the career ladder. But it has changed because we see that we can actually achieve the same thing and we can achieve even more by being genuine and being who we are and show that my feelings, because my feelings are a mirror of my values. My values are what I believe in. And then you have value sets. And my values are my compass in life. And my feelings come from my values. I'm going to stick to this for a very long time. And when people realize and feel that those are your values and you really believe in that, they will engage as well and they will follow and they will use a lot of energy with you to solve the problem and solve the quest.
I love that. So allow your values to be your compass in life. And my sister said something interesting the other day. She said, if you believe in what you're saying and if you
Mm.
really enjoy talking about a specific topic, people will also get excited about it. So if you as a leader and it's driven by your core values and your feelings and your compass in life and you're sharing these stories, people will want to go along with the journey with you.
Yes.
While if it bores you and if you don't believe yourself when you're saying it, other people will see that you're not being true to yourself. Just the last tip as we close off, Thomas. If there's a leader that's going to be doing an important presentation, board of directors, conference, sales pitch, whatever it might be, and they're feeling anxious, any tips for feeling more comfortable in doing public speaking or boosting your confidence? And then I will give my
Yeah, it's an old tip. I use it all the time, and they are people too. They are humans, hopefully. Hopefully.
still
And
at this
I think that's important. They are humans and they are there to listen to you. So you are the performer, so try to engage with them and tell stories. My
love
tip.
that. My tip is visualize yourself standing on that stage, speaking to that audience in the best possible way. So, what clothes will you be wearing? How will you be standing, sitting? What will you be doing? And play that out for yourself, maybe the night before, in the most powerful way. And you'll be surprised how that muscle memory kicks in when you are on the stage, that you could actually be as powerful as you imagined. So thank you so much for sharing, Thomas. I think we've touched on a lot today, looking at
Yeah.
preparation, storytelling, the do's and the don'ts, connecting the data with the stories, and finally, really being that authentic leader that's willing to also be vulnerable, but to use your values that can guide you as a compass and allowing them to go on the journey with you. I hope that your next presentation is going to be a killer one that sticks.
Yes.
Join me and
I hope
Thomas
so
for
too.
more of these amazing sessions. Thanks for this, Thomas, and good luck with your killer presentations coming up
Thank you.
next week.